Global markets come into the North American session with a cautious tone as investors continue to position ahead of Wednesday's Federal Reserve decision while monitoring developments in the Middle East. U.S. equity futures are relatively flat after another mixed session on Wall Street, reflecting a reluctance to add risk before two major central bank decisions from the Fed and the Bank of Japan. The U.S. dollar remains broadly firm, underpinned by elevated Treasury yields and continued expectations that the Fed will retain a hawkish bias even if it leaves interest rates unchanged this week. The Swiss franc is among the weakest performers after reports suggesting the Swiss National Bank could leave rates at zero through the end of 2027, reinforcing expectations of prolonged policy accommodation. Geopolitically, markets are watching reports that Oman's proposal for a regional framework to manage the Strait of Hormuz has received broader regional backing, potentially reducing concerns over future disruptions to one of the world's most important energy shipping routes. While optimism around a more durable ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran has helped keep oil prices well below last week's highs, investors remain cautious given how quickly the geopolitical backdrop has shifted in recent weeks. Comments from President Trump's scheduled meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu later today will also be watched closely for any signals on Iran and broader regional security. On the data front, there has been little in the way of major market-moving releases. French household confidence improved further in July, while Bank of Japan estimates pointed to core inflation holding around 2.7% in June, reinforcing expectations that policymakers remain on a gradual normalization path. In the U.S., the latest ADP National Employment Report continued to show hiring slowing modestly, adding to evidence that labor market momentum is cooling gradually rather than deteriorating sharply, though the series is not expected to influence this week's Fed decision. Looking ahead, the main event in the session today is U.S. consumer confidence, although any market reaction is likely to be limited unless the data materially surprises expectations. Instead, markets are expected to remain focused on positioning ahead of tomorrow's Federal Reserve decision while continuing to monitor Treasury supply, corporate earnings, and any fresh headlines out of the Middle East that could influence risk sentiment and commodity prices. That's all for now.